Now, it was 3 years ago today that U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the U.S. was officially recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and he ordered the relocation of the American embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It was a truly historic moment, changing over 7 decades of U.S. policy toward Israel and, of course, leading to the severing of ties between the Trump administration and the Palestinian Authority. At today's cabinet meeting in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Netanyahu paid tribute to that decision and some others by Trump, as did his special guest, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman.
Here is the proclamation you made that day. It will now be prominently displayed on the wall of Israel's cabinet room here in Jerusalem. It will be displayed alongside President Harry S. Truman's 1948 proclamation recognizing the newly established state of Israel. These 2 historic proclamations will never be forgotten.
In recognizing Jerusalem, President Trump also did something else. He sent a clear message to the world that the United States stands unflinchingly with its allies and that the United States bases its foreign policy on the truth, not on wishful thinking or upon fantasy.
Well, for more, let's go to our senior correspondent, Owen Alterman in Petah Tikva. And Owen, of course, the anniversary of that truly historic decision about moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, that is worth marking. But given the timing of this recognition, you often maybe have to see it as acknowledgement or maybe the beginning of a series of farewell tributes from Prime Minister Netanyahu to Donald Trump, despite the fact that President Trump so far seems to think he's not moving on.
Yeah, the farewell tour, Calev, is alive and well and is well along its way. You're absolutely right. As you watch those pictures from the cabinet room in Jerusalem, you listen to that speech, you'll watch David Friedman put that proclamation on the wall of the cabinet room. You can't escape but think that this is, again, intended as a thank you message to Donald Trump and not much more than that. I suspect that the historians, Calev, will beg to differ about seeing as parallel Harry Truman's decision in the days of May 1948, when Israel was under attack, to decide to come out and recognize the state of Israel. No one had any idea that it would survive, let alone live to see 72 years, as it's about to do this year, and to see alongside that the proclamation on Jerusalem as Israel's capital. But look, obviously looks good for the cameras. To thank you to Donald Trump, unquestionably an important step in Israel's history and in the history of the U.S.-Israel relations. But Calev, the other thing that's important here to mention is it was one thing to say Jerusalem was Israel's capital, but truly the more momentous thing that Donald Trump did on this issue was actually moving the brick and mortar embassy and actually moving the embassy, dedicating the embassy, and doing that in a way that makes it very, very difficult to reverse this decision, as even Joe Biden has admitted. If it were just the proclamation can be put on the wall, the proclamation can be taken off the wall. But once you have a brick and mortar building and you had the ceremony, you had the launch, makes it a real fait accompli, and Joe Biden also has admitted that.
Right. Now, I think there might be, along with a tribute and message to President Trump, there might have also been a sort of message to his successor, President-elect Joe Biden, because Prime Minister, as we know, President-elect Biden says he will not relocate the embassy again. It will stay in Jerusalem. But Prime Minister Netanyahu mentioned some other decisions taken by the Trump administration, such as recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, in which there's been actually no firm commitment from the president-elect that he will maintain that decision. So perhaps a message being sent here, certainly also to Joe Biden as well.
That's right. But again, Calev, those decisions are different because there's no brick and mortar building, and the Golan decision can be reversed at the stroke of a pen. Also, that declaration that settlements in the West Bank are not per se illegal can also be reversed. And of course, the decision on the Iran nuclear deal with Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned, not for the first time and not for the last time at the ceremony today. That, of course, is expected to be the central issue of dispute come January 20th between the Netanyahu government and between the Biden administration. But you're right, the Golan Heights and the declaration and settlements will also be there in the mix. But you're also right in implying those are going to be much, much, much easier for the Biden administration to reverse, particularly the stance on settlements, as controversial as that stance is, as controversial as the settlement movement is internationally, and as important as it seems like it will be for the Biden administration to reach out to the Palestinians, to restart some kind of peace track, or at least, as Joe Biden and his advisors had said, to stop unilateral moves by one side or the other. That would hurt the chances of a two-state solution.
Right. I also want to take note of U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman's presence there. Presumably he will be leaving with the Trump administration. And I think when this period, the history of that period is written, he will have emerged as a very influential figure behind several of those decisions we talked about, certainly, especially the one on moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Owen Alterman, thanks for joining us.